That golden age is for Wall Street and hedge funds. That golden age is for big tech. But you know what it is for the rest of the working families, ordinary families across America? It's not the golden age, it's the dark ages. That's why we must reject this nomination.
Senator Kane.
Morning, everybody. So I have 140,000 federal employees in Virginia, and they all have families. They all have people who care about them all over the Commonwealth, from VA nurses to active duty troops to people doing food inspections. And these are hardworking Virginians that I represent. Russ Vought has an unusual degree of gleeful hatred for the federal workforce. He gave a speech that I asked him about yesterday where he said, I want bureaucrats to be traumatized when they come into work because increasingly they know that they are the villains. He wants the federal workforce traumatized because they should know that they are the villains. Who talks like this? Who talks like this? You all have been in many speeches where you've heard people say, we need to cut federal spending, or we need to deal with the deficit. We hear these speeches all the time, often from Republican colleagues who then don't take any actions to do it, but that is a standard way of talking about the issue of government spending. But I don't know of anybody, much less anybody being considered for a position of this magnitude, who has a gleeful desire to traumatize people who are working for the federal government. And when I asked him about that, you want to traumatize like folks who are going out to be the air traffic controllers out at Reagan? Well, no. You want to traumatize the people inspecting our food, our medicines, well, no. You want to traumatize OMB folks? People might think they're well, no. Traumatize those interdicting fentanyl at the border? Well, no. Why'd you say it then? I know that Mr. Vought proclaims to be a faithful person, so I used a Bible verse on him, Luke 6:45, from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. The way you capture a thought reveals something very important about who you are as a person. And this gleeful hatred of the federal workforce will lead to nothing good. The second thing, I just want to emphasize what the leader talked about with regard to Project 2025. Senator Merkley mentioned this too. Project 2025 had a kind of an origin story in another document that Mr. Vought was the key architect of. He set up a think tank. That think tank proposed a document about the federal budget. The title of this budget document was An End to Woke and Weaponized Government. Okay. Well, I'm interested. 104 pages. What are you going to do to end woke and weaponized government in your budget, Mr. Vought? And he explained, you look at the document, /SNAP benefits, /Pell Grants, /low-income heating and energy assistance programs, /rental assistance. I asked him about all of those. Tell me why these are woke and weaponized programs. And again, what he said is, I'm not here to defend that document. He wrote it, he named it, he's tipped us all off about what he's going to do. Nobody will be surprised when the Trump first budget comes over here and it's got the thumbprints of Russ Vought's Project 2025 and End to Woke and Weaponized Government all over it, slashing these programs that everyday people count on. He is a nominee who has told us all that he's going to do things that will be very harmful to the American public. We need to reject him. Thanks so much.
Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Chuck. Good morning, everyone. You know, to carry off of what my colleagues are sharing this morning after this hearing yesterday, I don't know how many of you had a chance to take it in. I'm going to carry forward a little bit where Senator Kane was just talking about. While Mr. Vought responded to Senator Kane in saying that he was not there to talk about this report that he authored. He's the coach, he wrote the playbook. When I asked him to further clarify why this group and this document was founded and put together, he owned it. He said it right there, his words to the committee and to the American people. So just make no mistake about what's coming. Mr. Vought is the person, the proof, that this document exists, Project 2025, the documents that got put into it, this notion that all of these programs that make a difference, a positive difference in people's lives, to help when those utility bills get a little high. Right now, everyone's wearing jackets, scarves. You're worried about getting cold. We had this crazy storm that hit a big part of America that usually doesn't get piles of snow. Did you all see those photos in Florida? The entire South. You can't stay warm in the winter and your heat goes out. You can't insulate your home. You might die. You're going to get really sick, and especially for the most vulnerable against us. Why in the world would this person author an effort to eliminate the programs that matter in, let's pick a few states. How about Ohio and Wisconsin, where some of my colleagues serve on that committee, where their constituents depend on these programs every day? Well, one area that caught my attention in this document is, it said, quote, Head Start participants have worse behavior and academic outcomes than children who do not enroll in the program. I think Mr. Vought was surprised when I told him I went to Head Start. Got me to the United States Senate. What do you think about that? Didn't respond. My constituents that go to that Head Start that's steps away from the church that I go to, when I'm back in New Mexico, what's he telling to these kids all across America? And what's he saying about early childhood education? Why is that on the chopping block? And quite honestly, every one of these programs and other programs that President Trump has talked about in a favorable way, it's all on the chopping block. As a matter of fact, when these budgets come to the American people and to Congress, they're going to have Mr. Vought's signature on them, just like these other budgets do as well. So I'm very concerned about where we stand today, and here's what it comes down to. All of those teachers, those police officers, the firefighters, the pipe fitters, the iron workers, the builders back in New Mexico, those small businesses that are our favorites. I hope someone speaks up when these budgets come forward and they're going to increase costs on all of these families and make things harder. There's got to be a better way to do this. As I close here, just make no mistake about all my brothers and sisters who have claimed that Project 2025 didn't exist, that they never read it, that they weren't aware of it, because Mr. Vought is proof that it exists. And now he's being nominated as the head person to put these budgets together. It's about time that someone's honest with the American people, and I certainly hope that President Trump and others are willing to speak up about this nonsense and just own it, just like Mr. Vought did.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate one thing. Yesterday or 2 days ago, President Trump talked about the golden age. Yeah, it's a golden age for drug manufacturers. It's a golden age for big oil companies. It's a golden age for billionaires. It is not at all a golden age for middle-class people who need help and don't get the tax help that the wealthy get. It's not a golden age for American workers who get less pay. It's not a golden age for helping the people who need food stamps. It's not a golden age for people who need insulin to be cheaper. The golden age is only for a very limited few, unfortunately. You could not have a worse nominee in a more powerful position than Mr. Vought. On this subject first. Yes.
Have you talked to any of your Republican colleagues or any of you who are even thinking about voting against Mr. Vought?
Well, we just had the hearing yesterday. It's all coming out. Project 2025, they used to say, had nothing to do with the Trump presidency. It has everything to do with the Trump presidency. And as they learn it, I hope we'll get some votes from their side. It's going to hurt their constituents as much as anybody. Yes.
On empowerment, Trump announced a funding freeze on foreign aid and on green energy. Are you saying those orders are illegal or unconstitutional? And if so, what can you do about it? Are you going to file a lawsuit, or what do you do with this?
It is still the IRA, for instance, clean energy, which I wrote in large part in the IRA, is the law to impound those funds would be unconstitutional, absolutely. Yes.
Other than Senators McConnell, Murkowski, and Collins, have you received any indications from your GOP colleagues privately that they're considering voting against Pete Hegseth's nomination?
Okay, I want to stick to the subject, but on this subject, Pete Hegseth is so utterly unqualified. He ranks up there with Vought as one of the very worst nominees that could be put forward. The Defense Department, people's lives depend on it. Civilians and, of course, the men and women in the armed services. And Pete Hegseth has shown himself not only incapable of running a large organization, he often shows himself incapable of showing up, or showing up in a way where he could get anything done. He is so out of the mainstream and so unqualified for DOD that I am hopeful we will get our Republican colleagues to join us. There'll be a vote this afternoon. Yes.
Schumer, just on the nominees, I do have Democratic support, bipartisan support, because there are some, like John Ratcliffe. Do you support Chris Murphy slowing this confirmation process down, and do you think that's going to happen with other bipartisan?
Look, there are some nominees like Rubio that got broad support, but to have a detailed discussion, I have some doubts about Mr. Ratcliffe, particularly when I asked him how he'd react if Tulsi Gabbard were put in charge of him in the DNI. So I think it's for a day or two or a few hours to examine these nominees who have such power thoroughly. Absolutely, absolutely. Our idea is to let whole truth come out. If they try to rush them through, we don't want that to happen. Yes.
On federal workers, any reaction to them, to the Trump administration ending telework for federal workers? It affects a lot of different workers who've been working from home recently because of the COVID.
Yeah, and I'll pull on Tim, who's been our federal expert. But telework works in a lot of ways. To just take a blanket brush across and say get rid of all telework is going to hurt millions and millions of Americans who depend on these people doing their jobs. There are many ways that telework is very, very effective. And when you say get rid of all telework, it just means you want to take a dagger to the heart of federal workers and the federal government. Tim, do you want to follow up?
I'd love to tackle that one. There was a hearing in the House not long ago, last year, where the OPM director appeared before the House for the last time. And he revealed results of a study. The percentage of federal workers that telework is lower than the percentage of private sector workers that telework. Why is that? Well, what you ought to be focusing on is being effective, and a lot of private employers have realized telework is really effective, just like we've realized telehealth can be really effective. You can access course content via, teleplatforms. And so why would you just have an across-the-board rule rejecting what is a best practice now in the private sector to do it? I have my caseworkers do a lot of telework because my tax expert, for example, is in Abingdon, Virginia, in Appalachia, and she handles all of the tax concerns raised by Virginians in any part of the state. Her job has always been telework. Even when she's in the office, she's interacting with constituents essentially via telework. So that kind of across-the-board thing is just designed to make people's lives harder. It's part of this trauma strategy. But the real challenge with it is it leads to less effective service of our fellow Americans, which is what we want our federal workers to do.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Good job, everybody.
Getting the ceasefire signal. Instead of thinking he was hitting the ceasefire signal.